I have always loved music. It evokes memories and feelings that are often surprising. My husband, Mark, planned a romantic Valentine's Day last year before COVID. He took me to the beach with guitar in hand and began to play a song from his summer camp, believing that it was particular to his camp experience, and as an endearing gesture, wanted to share it with me. I began to chime in with the same familiarity, and for a moment, he just stared, incredulous. He couldn't believe I knew the song, and it brought us both back to a different, but now shared experience. Two different camps. He and I never having met one another during that time in our lives, and yet we shared a moment between us through this song. I'm smiling and almost laughing, even now thinking about it, because over the past year, it has become a reference point, even during moments of tension, which many of us have felt during COVID, where we both just burst into song and then laughter. Music, of course, is enjoyable and entertaining, and it can be very powerful. The Global Council on Brain Health recently released a report, Music on Our Minds, highlighting the beneficial effects music has on our overall well being, including brain chemicals such as an increase in dopamine and oxytocin, both feel good chemicals, and moderate evidence that music can help lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Music can relax the mind, energize the body, and even help people better manage pain. Music is also known to evoke memories, as in my opening anecdote. And it can also improve memory, increase cognitive performance, promote weight loss, improve sleep, improve motivation, improve mood, reduce symptoms of depression, and even boost your immune system. Makes me want to listen to music more and give up taking my vitamins. Dr. Norman N. Holland, in his article, How Opera Makes Brain Sense, discusses the complexity of opera and our response to both the music and the specific situational story that evokes emotion. It's what he calls music drama. With opera, our emotions shift from situation to situation as the music and specific moments are intertwined. Welcome to Small and Gutsy, a podcast featuring interviews with nonprofit and social impact organizations under $10 million. My name is Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. My hope is that you love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. Feel free to pass along any valuable information you hear today to others, and remember to send me the name of any organization you'd like featured at reachus@theintrinsicgroup.com. Arizona Opera, originally the Tucson Opera Company, was founded in 1971 by a dedicated group of opera enthusiasts. Within 5 years, Arizona Opera was performing complete seasons in both Tucson and Phoenix. Since its inaugural year, Arizona Opera has produced over 170 fully staged operas and concerts. The company's artistic history is rich with a blend of opera's traditional repertoire featuring Baroque, bel canto, verissimo works, turn-of-the-century masterpieces, operettas, and American operas. Arizona Opera has also presented Wagner's complete Ring Cycle twice, a feat that has only been accomplished in North America by 4 other companies. Recently, Arizona Opera has embarked on a podcast series of their own to introduce listeners to many behind-the-scenes activities and the amazing folks who create the on-stage enjoyment. Additionally, they just launched episode 1 of the curated program called Loud, Living Opera, Understanding Diversity, which I cannot wait to learn more about. Their tagline is bold, brave, brilliant, and I think we can add gutsy to that. I am so very excited to introduce the president and general director of Arizona Opera, Joseph Spector. So let's get started. Welcome, Joe. Please share with us your passion about Arizona Opera, your deep connection and commitment, and what led to your involvement.
First of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Laura. It's always a joy to be able to share with folks, both inside and outside the work that we do, just how special this organization is, how special this art form is, particularly in this period of time where, we're all seeking a deeper level of connection than can sometimes be afforded by a Zoom call. I think art plays an outsized role in hopefully creating some grounding for us in our lives. So it's a real pleasure to be here, and I thank you for that. My passion for opera. So I think you got at this a little bit in your introduction about what storytelling through a music drama can do for folks. What it connects with for me is, the idea of how memory and an emotional state are so linked. I'm sort of an evangelist for this art form because of this. I believe that opera and the way in which the human voice is produced in that storytelling has an ability to elevate the emotional content of that storytelling in a way that is just special and different from other kinds of musical storytelling.
Hmm.
It's not a better or worse, but
Right.
it's something so elemental about the human singing voice, the resonance of that voice hitting you without the aid of amplification
Hmm.
does to create that heightened emotion. And because of that, the storytelling, I think, finds a hold within us in just a qualitatively different way than other art forms. You can program any kind of aesthetic, any kind of story from any part of the world around that solitary element of the human voice produced in that way, and
Hmm.
create an opportunity to build a memory in someone for that story and its impact that's just it's unmatched in other art forms. My professional mission is to be a part of leading opera into a 21st century that realizes the scale of impact of opera and the depth of impact
Hmm.
that I think is really possible through this art form. It wasn't that long ago that opera was an art form that was a popular art form that was
Hmm.
consumed by the masses. I think it's easy to see that we're not in the center of, the popular music or theater world in general. But I actually think that there's nothing that's changed, and probably some things in our favor to make possible that kind of renaissance for this art form.
Hmm.
Because I really truly believe that this elemental quality of the human voice is all you have to do is watch, a talent competition on
Hmm.
television, and you get some kid up there singing Nessun Dorma or something like
Hmm.
that, and the audience is up in 2 seconds. There's just something so powerful about it. And so the question becomes, why aren't we connecting? And what do we
Right.
need to do more? But circling back to the heart of your question, what was exciting about coming to Arizona and to Arizona Opera was seeing the space between where this company was and the amount of impact that it was currently having
Hmm.
to where I thought it could be over some period of time,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
wanting to be a catalyst for helping the organization realize that growth, and in turn realizing that higher level of scale and impact. I am one I am but one cog in a huge
Sure.
machine
Yeah.
that is so beautiful to be a part of. I'm so
Hmm.
happy to be a part of the organism that is Arizona Opera. Staff, board, a
Hmm.
community, partners. It all of it is an ecosystem. So I just want to recognize how much hard work goes into doing what we've been doing, whether it's now or 50 years ago when the company was
Hmm.
born.
I love that
Very
vision of
precious.
an ecosystem and a living, breathing entity, is the way you describe it. And the working together of that produces all of the programs and certainly the season of opera that you put forth.
I think if you're going to distill it, opera cannot exist without at least one person singing and
Hmm.
without at least one person listening. And it probably is
Yeah.
good if they're not the same person.
Right. Yes, it's true. We can all do that in the shower. Yeah.
But and someone may take issue with that, philosophically, but for me, I do this art for people.
Share some of the programs. You can talk about the season and what you're planning, and I want to hear that. But I also think you've been hugely responsive during COVID. You alluded to that before, but you have a myriad of programs that are really opportunities for people to learn about Arizona opera and to learn about opera in general.
Let me go back first to where we were almost a year ago now in
Hmm.
March, and going through June 24th of 2020, trying to figure out. And this was a turnaround opera company for a long time. I think probably many nonprofits and maybe the entire opera industry are going to be in turnaround, in the sense that our business model has been so challenged and compromised. And when we reached the spring of 2020, we had reached a level of, it would be a little strong to say stability per se, because I don't think the nature of nonprofit performing arts is ever stable in a most conventional sense.
Right.
But we had reached something like stability. Our primary goal for this year was to make it to next year.
Great. It's a good goal.
Because there are a lot of things you can do, but if you don't achieve that particular goal, then you'll be done at the end of that, and that wouldn't be a great outcome. And what's wonderful about that simplicity is that then it drives the question, well, what does it take to survive as a nonprofit performing arts organization in a pandemic? And where we landed was for us to be a going enterprise a year later, which we sort of viewed as the general sort of time frame, roughly, at least losing a season in a traditional season.
Right.
What does survival look like? And what survival came to look like to us as we continued our discussion was we need to keep people connected. We need to keep people connected to our organization,
beautiful,
to one another through the art form, and basically keep delivering on our mission. So it's a trust fall exercise. That's the way I think of it.
It's a great way to describe it, actually.
Because we're committing financial resources to produce things. There's nothing free about what we're doing right now.
And there's nothing necessarily coming in from your natural ticket purchasers. So
this is the blessing of our otherwise very challenging business model is that most of the income for U.S. opera companies does not come from tickets, especially opera companies our size. The vast majority of our income comes from contributions, endowment distributions, that kind of thing. Tickets often make up 15 to 30% of our income. When your margins are as thin as any our industries are, losing 15 to 30% of your income definitely hurts. But it wasn't our primary source of income. And so that made it all the more clear that, we need to make a case for community investment. And the only way we're going to do that is by creating programming that authentically serves and creates joy, creates that connection I was talking about among not just the people that are with us right now, but the people who have traditionally not been as well served by our organization or our art form. And so, what does that mean? And how do we accomplish something like that at the same time we're conserving financial resources as best we can, which is something we always do, but it's all the more so when it's like, well, when does the regular mechanics of funding a nonprofit resume? Thankfully, having some astute medical knowledge on our board, really helping us parse out, truth from fiction in terms of what this pandemic was likely to look like in terms of the time frame. We embraced this idea that the 2021 season was going to be a season of reimagined programming. I know it's a word that's horrifically abused, but it still means something to me. And so we came up with basically sort of 5 main sort of tranches. A studio spotlight program, which celebrates our young artist training program, the Marion Roos Pullen Opera Studio, which has become one of the really top training programs for young singers in the country. A program called Arizona Arias, which is a program where we bring in guest artists of stature to perform with an orchestra, socially distanced. And that was supposed to be a live outdoor socially distanced program that's going to be all virtual. Our Studio Spotlight program started live in person with a virtual side, and that is pure virtual now. A film of The Copper Queen, which is a world premiere commissioned by Arizona Opera based on the haunted hotel in Bisbee, Arizona of the same name that was originally planned for filming this past fall and then January and now mid-April with a release in fall of 21 is our current plan.
Right. And it's so relevant for the community because
all operas take place someplace, and that place is generally not where you are at that moment.
Right. It's
and so why not Bisbee? And then a program which you've referred to called Connection Lab, which is really an umbrella over 3 different podcasts. Our Behind the Scenes podcast, which is a super insider sort of take. What are the mechanics of make an opera production work? Then there's a video series that I run called Unmiked, where we take someone who's a professional inside the world of opera and then a professional outside of the world of opera who has some overlapping aspects to their profession. And so, a good example is a recent episode where we had a stage combat choreographer for opera companies at Metropolitan Opera, Washington National Opera, Joe Eisenberg, matched up against one of the leading MMA trainers
I love it.
in the world, Greg Jackson out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then we had a third guest on that show, George Bicadze, who's a ballet master at Boston Ballet and who was also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo and Karate black belt.
I love it. Didn't we used to call those a mashup? Yeah.
Exactly. So behind the scenes is a program that really serves people who are really like just love getting under the fingernails, and generally very opera insiders.
Mm-hmm.
Opera people love like being able to see those mechanics. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that's made the Metropolitan Opera's live in HD program so successful is that you get
Yeah.
to see those backstage shots and you get to feel like you're part of that action. Unmiked is sort of a blend because we do get into really opera wonky things, but we also explore some other completely different space. And then the third program in those podcast video series is Loud, Living Opera, Understanding
Yeah.
Diversity, which is the program you mentioned at your intro. That program really centers communities of color. That program was born of the idea of civic practice.
Mm-hmm.
What are the resources our nonprofit can apply not to fulfill our mission in the most basic sense, but rather to say what are the needs of a community that we're not serving, and how can we use our resources to serve that community better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very early foray into that work, but I'm very proud of that and grateful to
Mm-hmm.
Taniqua Broughton and Wheezy Agarola, who are
Mm-hmm.
the creators of that show.
What's beautiful about that is what is should be so prominent in any inclusion and diversity program, any company that has a program like that, and all of them should, is that individuals who are participating in whatever service is or as an employee or any of that need to see themselves reflected in the work. And so by doing that, you're reflecting the community at large in a beautiful way. You're spotlighting and highlighting opportunities for inclusion and diversity.
Yeah,
Really
and we have a
cool.
long way to go as an industry on that. It was like a front page of the arts section in the New York Times 5 years ago when the Metropolitan Opera opened a season with Verdi's Otello, yeah,
Hmm.
Shakespeare's Othello,
Hmm.
uh, for the first time without a Caucasian tenor basically in blackface. So
Amazing.
when
Yeah.
the history of
Hmm.
problematic
Hmm.
problematic issues with the inherited repertoire are
Yeah.
that close up, you just know, okay, we've got a long way to go. I'm very proud of the fact that Arizona Opera has been engaging in storytelling through opera on our main stage and through our community engagement education programs that has helped to center other kinds of stories, whether that is the piece El Milagro del Recuerdo, the mariachi opera co-produced with Houston Grand Opera, Fellow Travelers about the Lavender Scare during the McCarthy era, Charlie Parker's Yardbird about the great but tortured American jazz saxophonist. We have found avenues through contemporary compositions
Hmm.
to start connecting in a more serious way with other communities and particular BIPOC communities. But man, we've got a long way to go.
Well, I love your acknowledgement of it. And I love that you are doing something about it actively. And you're engaging your larger community, the community of Arizona Opera, but even the community outside, to say, we need to do this better. Here's how we're going to address it. And you're doing it, which is, the first step. And it's really remarkable. And you're producing amazing things.
I think of it less as a thing you do than than a process that never stops, which
Yes.
is just,
Well said.
yeah,
Hmm.
if we become truly reflective of
Hmm.
this community, and this is the part that's admittedly somewhat self-serving, if we become truly reflective of this community, we will become an indispensable asset for this community.
Right.
and
Absolutely.
and and this is an extension of that sort of trust fall metaphor. If
Hmm.
we are really here for people, we're telling their
Hmm.
stories, we're engaging them in every way that we possibly can, and to the extent that we can do that in a way that is truly reflective of those communities we serve,
Hmm. Hmm.
ev- everything else is going to be okay.
Right. It's not, I mean, I understand the piece about it being self serving, but it's really what you said earlier in the program, which is raising the awareness that opera is really accessible and should be for everyone.
I'm so glad you used the word accessible
Mm.
because I detest the word accessible.
It's okay. All right.
But let me tell you why, because
Hmm.
I know what you mean when you say it, and I
Hmm.
agree with the intent of it. I'm just generally a pain, so bear with me.
No, play with this. This is what we're about. I'm
Yeah,
perfectly comfortable.
I think that
Mhm.
you know you have your wonderful husband Mark, and you go to the beach and he plays you guitar songs, and you realize you have this spiritual connection that goes back, and you didn't realize that you were connected through this music in this
Mhm.
way, and Some other occasion, you might go to a beautiful dinner someplace, you might go to a show. I wonder which of those experience you would say, you sold to Mark or Mark sold to you by saying, let's go do this thing. It will be accessible.
Mhm, mhm,
What we
mhm,
owe to people that goes beyond accessibility. And I think this creates accessibility.
mhm,
Um, I'm just giving you a hard time. What we owe people is excitement, and
mhm,
excitement can derive from, this is an unexpected story. It could
mhm,
be, this feels like my story. It
mhm,
could feel like, here's an escape from my story in a way that
mhm,
I really need right now.
mhm, mhm.
And I can tell you from my prolific Netflix COVID binging, that I looking
Mhm,
for something that quickens something in me, that excites me
mhm.
somehow. And excitement can take so many different forms.
Right,
What we owe to people is telling stories that are so overwhelmingly interesting and exciting that they can't help but be a part of what we're doing.
right. So let's flip the word from accessible to excitement. That's the
Hmm.
first thing, right?
Yeah.
And the second thing is my response back to you is, if one is unaware that it exists, then it is not accessible.
Yeah,
So, right?
absolutely.
So in that frame, you want to excite people. And the first step to that excitement is letting them know you understand them. You're reflecting who they are in your storytelling so they can connect in some way.
Hmm.
And so it's part of that awareness raising more than anything else. We are here. We're part of your community. We are your community. We're
Hmm.
reflected in your community and our collective community, however you want to frame it. But yeah, you want to excite people in that way. You want them to come back for more.
Creating exciting stories is about understanding people and understanding what might be
Yes.
exciting to them. When I was in Austin, we were producing Tosca, which is one of my favorite arias. I was looking to sort of try to shine a light on this production in some way that would be fun for people. So I decided that we would do a flash mob of a section from the opera. There have been many opera flash mobs, and
Hmm.
they usually feature some cheery, section of the Traviata da 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 da
Hmm.
da 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 dee, or Escamillo's, the bullfighters aria from Carmen, or something really catchy and upbeat. And I
Hmm.
thought, let's put something really dark and diabolical.
To see what happens.
Yeah, and we put it into a shopping center, into a grocery store. We got our entire chorus there, and we did this whole scene, and it was just wonderful.
Great.
It's a very, very dark scene. It was practically improvised. We threw it together in almost no time,
Wow.
and we just covered people in GoPros, and had to, just electronic keyboard was the orchestra. I mean, it was not a sophisticated execution, but it
Hmm.
was fun. And
Hmm.
in the course of the week that followed the capture, which was basically a week before the show opened,
Hmm.
and the time the show opened, I remember logging onto YouTube to check our views on this.
Hmm.
And opera videos often get, you know, less than 100 views, less than 500 views, less than a
Yeah.
thousand views for sure,
Hmm.
on a general basis. But once in a while, something sort of sneaks through. The number of views was 6,900. And what was neat about it was, we did three performances of each opera in Austin,
Hmm.
and we had 2,330 seats in the hall.
Hmm.
And so 6,990 in that week, basically three full houses of people viewed that video.
Hmm.
I'm willing to wager that a lot of those people never came to the show. That might have been the only
Mhm.
time they experienced something
Mhm.
from opera. It,
Mhm.
it was something cool and fun that was
Right.
shareable. And we need to figure out how to take a lesson from that, not superficially, because
Mhm.
I can come up with something that's cool and fun and shareable that doesn't necessarily help us fulfill a mission of a deeper level of impact.
Right.
There's something there that's very, very pure, that we need to make sure is at the center of our thought process. Why is it that so many people would want to engage with this one piece, and
Mhm.
maybe not come to a performance of Wozzeck or something like that?
Mhm.
There's
Mhm.
probably room for both kinds of things, but are we centering a broader community all the time?
Mhm.
And are we creating an opportunity for excitement, not just once you're in the theater, but before you get there? Is what we're doing, offering that potential to onboard? And I think that
Mhm.
is where the word accessible, maybe excitement creates accessibility.
I agree with you, and I think that excitement, it might be for some people the first time they've had a taste of something that they never thought they dipped their toe into before. And so
Hmm.
you've given that opportunity. And then to take it a step further, to your point of not having sort of a superficial, like, here's the only taste that you get, is then comes, how do we make it available? I won't use accessible. How do we make it available? Getting folks to learn more about it gives people choices about this art form in its many ways that it gets expressed.
If any of your listeners have ever invited
Mm,
someone to the opera,
mm,
someone that loves opera, inviting someone
mhm,
who does not know opera,
mhm,
you always hear the same basic things. It's going to be boring. It's going to cost too much
mhm,
money.
mhm,
I don't know the language. All of these barriers of
mhm,
entry, and none of which really hold up under any amount of exposure. We have super titles. We have
mhm,
$25 seats,
mm,
and what you realize, because you see this exact same people, paying $500 so they can go to a music festival outdoors, sit
mhm,
in a mud puddle 200 yards from a
mhm,
stage.
mhm.
What's
Good
what's more
point.
elite? What's more elite than that?
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
ask
but
you to spend
yeah,
$500 to sit in a mud puddle.
yeah.
That is pretty Marie Antoinette level, and we don't think of it that way. But
Mhm,
but the reason we don't think of it that way is because those festivals are delivering on excitement, and
mhm,
and excitement overcomes all these rationale. Oh, no, I don't have $25. Well, you bought an Apple Watch last week. You were excited
mhm,
about that enough to overcome that rationale.
mhm,
If what we are doing is meaningful enough to people and exciting
mhm.
enough for people, those rationales will just evaporate.
That's a really good point, that you want to meet folks where their points of excitement are,
Mhm.
and maybe even in some way create the aspect that educates them about what they don't know could be exciting. Because
Mhm.
again, as you hear the word opera, someone may already have a preconceived notion.
I mean, the
Yeah.
brand of opera, opera evokes powerful emotions, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people not positive emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what's the use of that word?
Mm-hmm.
What is the use of that word? If I say, "Will you come to an opera?" and
Mm-hmm.
instantly I'm fighting an uphill battle to create
Mm-hmm.
interest in you, what's the
Mm-hmm.
value of it?
It's a good point. I've often thought about, with the word, which I believe is outdated, is my own profession, social work.
Mm,
The two words are outdated.
mm,
We're
mm,
social impact agents. We are
mm.
change makers.
Yeah.
So I agree. I'm going to challenge you and dedicate this podcast to changing nature, the word, the meaning of opera.
There's two ways to do it. One, we ditch the word,
Yeah.
or two, we come up with such an overwhelming reimagination of what the form is or what the stories are, or maybe it's just creating an awareness of people of what we're already doing,
Hmm.
so that we can overwhelm that, um, I think, fairly ingrained popular viewpoint.
I did notice, and I don't know if this is still going on, that you have a book club.
The book club has been around for a number of years now, maybe 5 years, 6 years.
Mhm.
It precedes me, but is one of the things that I really, one of the many programs that I was grateful to have inherited when I came to this company. And they are meeting virtually now. They do several books a year, and we have our next one coming right up. I think we have more folks attending the book club now and participating because it's virtual.
Do people learn about it just to get online or sign up or?
We send emails about it, social media, those kinds of things. Yeah, and that's a very rich experience.
Hmm.
A lot of people that love opera love reading too, and
Right.
and then you're combining books that tie to our season often
Hmm.
somehow, so you have this operatic aspect and reading at the same time.
What I love about that is it accentuates the storytelling component of what opera is about anyway. And so it's another medium to get to that place of awareness and interest and connection and community. Small and Gutsy is sponsored by the Intrinsic Group, my boutique management consulting firm specializing in guiding organizations to leverage talent, optimize processes, and to ensure the organization's narrative is aligned with their culture. We'd love to invite you to be a sponsor. So if you're interested in sponsoring Small and Gutsy to keep it going, please reach out to me at reachus@theintrinsicgroup.com. Joe, as you may or may not know, we always have a round of quick, gutsy
Oh
questions.
Lord.
But they're fun. Hopefully, you'll find them fun. What is at the top of Arizona Opera's wish list? And the answer cannot be money or funding, because that's an easy one for most nonprofits.
I wouldn't answer that anyway, because
Good.
I think the funding is an outcome of what would be at the top of our list, which is impact. We're a mission driven organization. We're here to serve a community through our art.
Mm-hmm.
I think the funding does come if we do that right.
Yeah.
But opera is an art form that we commit to in service of Arizona and the whole state of Arizona. Being able to lead an opera company that performs main stage offerings in 2 cities is already very unique. There are only a couple other opera companies in the country that do that. We're here for impact. The more impact we can have, the better.
So your wish list is really to have a huge impact on as many people as you can.
If we get that right, everything else flows.
So this next question is going to be really a hard one for you, and I'm really sorry about this one.
Oh, Lord, okay.
If you were to think of a song, I didn't say opera song, but could be, that describes Arizona opera, what would it be?
You know, I because this is like the quick answer section, I'm just going to say the first thing that came to my mind.
Absolutely.
It was The Impossible Dream.
Oh, I love it. No, perfect answer. But let's hope it's not so impossible. Okay.
Right.
What makes Arizona Opera Gutsy?
The people. What is the nature of a nonprofit organization? It's defined by the folks that engage with it, whether that's internally, the staff or the board, or the community that's brave enough to come to our theaters. We've been very disruptive in terms of our artistic program, and it takes courage to be involved with an organization like that at every single level.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of guts there.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of guts too. And I think your program is reflective of how gutsy you are, which is really wonderful. What is something that outsiders or maybe even some insiders don't know about Arizona Opera?
There's so many ways I could I could answer that question. That's the harder question than the song one, because mostly because there are a lot of things. I would say the fact that we have one of the most robust K through 12 education touring programs in the country is sine qua non. You know, like you just look across the field, even much larger opera companies don't do what we do educationally. And with arts education being generally so deficient in the US, I'm so proud to be part of an organization that is so committed to playing a role. It's never enough. But it and I just want to salute Cassie Roble, who's our director of those programs in that regard. I would say the commitment to community engagement, it doesn't touch everyone at every single moment, but it's pervasive. It's every moment of every day for us. And then I would say just, you know, we're one of a small number of opera companies that have invested in recent years as fully as we have in contemporary work. And I'm grateful for all of our colleagues in the field that are doing that work. And there are some really notable examples. So we are part of a group of companies that do that. But I think it's something to be proud of, that living, breathing art form does mean both celebrating the past of this art form and celebrating its future. And that's what makes an exciting present. Sometimes people, they come to a show, but they don't necessarily know their opera company. And to know that they should be proud that their opera company is taking chances like that. I think that might surprise people if they knew the national landscape more.
I really appreciate that. Both the commitment to education, the commitment to community, our arts education within our public schools is so limited. So the fact that you have really taken that on is huge. And I thank you for that. It's really remarkable. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about Arizona Opera, who would that be?
It's a fantastic question. It's a fantastic question because, you know, just talking to this idea of whether it's excitement or accessibility, the stories we're telling, what have you, you know, you're talking about a person that could help be a bridge facilitating that process. I don't know if I have a specific individual as much as a kind of individual. I'm thinking about, you know, a figure from the world of sports. The reason that's the case is, first of all, there is something primal about both music and sport. Yeah. And we have, as a species, we remain constantly connected to sport and to music also, but not necessarily opera as a subset of that. The episode of Unmiked that we had that I mentioned earlier, Greg Jackson, one of the leading MMA coaches in the world, multiple UFC champions who have trained with him and so forth, is also a lifelong opera fan. His parents sing in the New Mexico Philharmonic Chorus or something along those lines. In our visit together on my show Unmiked, Greg talked about how he thinks about rhythm and music and classical music as structures through which he trains his fighters.
I agree. I think very often we don't naturally connect the two, and they're so deeply intertwined and connected. So thank you. I think that's a terrific answer. You're funny, Jeff. For those of you who can't see that because it's not on Zoom, there was a whew wiping of the forehead. No, you did a great job. Any last comments or thoughts?
I just want to thank you again for having me on this program. It's a gift to people that do any kind of work that involves impact to be able to have a platform to share our stories.
Thank you.
And I'm grateful for all you are doing to basically just be a bully pulpit for us in the industry. And you're really centering our stories in your podcast. At the end of the day, almost everyone that's involved in nonprofits could do a different thing. Wonderfully talented, brilliant people, day in, day out, doing something that they're not reaching their, profit maximization or anything like that. They're doing it because the work is meaningful. And so I really just want to say thank you for today being someone who's helping us get our story out.
You've shared so much about the vast array of excitement that you offer, not accessibility, okay? Excitement that you offer, the range and varied programs, that there is something for everyone, and that you have really continued to drive the concept of community and reflection and inclusion and the benefits that it gives folks who attend, whether virtually at this point in time, and in a socially distanced manner when it's offered, and then certainly within the theater when we can do that again. This has been an incredible pleasure for me. I have learned a lot, and I'm personally making a commitment to be more engaged in the opera world. I want to learn more. I want to learn how to pronounce things correctly. I'm teasing. I certainly, having lived in Vienna for a short period of time, had my share of folks opera, and the Staatsoper, and really enjoyed that. And they had them on big screens outside for folks who, weren't able to attend inside. And I have an appreciation, but after having spoken to you today, I have a deeper appreciation of the range of opportunity for that soulful connection. So I want to thank you very, very much for being with me today. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars, and write a review on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts, or buy us a coffee. buymeacoffee.com/small and gutsy. Here's one from Nick W. Laura, you are so compassionate and intelligent. This is an amazing platform. Thanks, Nick. We really, really appreciate that. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, my co-producer, sound engineer, and composer, the amazing Pavel Franson, my exceptionally talented graphic designer, Nate Addy, my social work intern extraordinaire, Stephanie Tran. Please check out their bios on the Intrinsic website, and all the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. Our blog of these small and gutsy nonprofits and social impact organizations can be found in the organizational stories section of the Intrinsic Group website, so that we can continue to link clients, volunteers, future employees, investors, and donors to this small but mighty network. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. We just want you to learn about the small and gutsy nonprofit and social impact organizational sector so they can spread their story and their impactful work. From small and gutsy to big with impact, I'm Laura Witkoff, and thanks for listening.